Okay, greetings everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy, the archetypes and the elements. This is our first full moon session, and I want to welcome you to this fantastic opportunity because tonight there's going to be a full moon. We are in currently a solar transit through gate 36. So that means that today Bella and I are going to be discussing the archetype of the storm. So before we dive into that, though, I just want to give a heads up to all of you who are joining us either on Facebook or our solar members that our schedule will have a slight unusual rhythm over the next 2 weeks. We will be doing a session on Tuesday, the 22nd, as well as Thursday, the 29th, and then again, is that right, Bella? No, I think I have
it's 2 Tuesdays in a row, right?
Yes. So let me look at a calendar because anyways, we'll be having a discussion next Tuesday. And for our members, you can check your email today. I'll have that sent out with all of the dates for you. So we'll be meeting next Tuesday. So gene key 36 is going to be the movement from the shadow of turbulence to the city of compassion by way of humanity. And I think this is very interesting because there is a codon ring of humanity. However, this particular gene key is part of the codon ring of divinity. And with gene key 36, we have this special link between what is earthly or human and what is divine. So I'm really excited to be discussing this particular one, and I think this archetype is really a fantastic title for the energies that it represents. However, I think it's not the most obvious archetype that we might think of when we talk about bridging humanity with divinity. So I'm excited to talk about what this possibility is about and why this particular full moon is such a fantastic opportunity for us to grow in new ways. So Bella, thanks for joining me. By the way, Bella is joining us from Sweden, so I really appreciate her presence here and sharing with us today. So Bella, would you introduce the storm or share your thoughts about what's happening with this archetype right now?
Yeah, when we write the archetypes, we have decided to speak to the gift a lot. And when you write about the 36, it feels inauthentic to not bring in part of that darkening of the light, which is the essence of this archetype. And I feel we could also show the art because it's kind of this being in, I think it's more than anything to be in the eye of the storm, because in the 36, you cannot not do it. You are going to feel the storm, and it's part of that. And we were in the restraining of the light last transit in the 22, and now it's really the darkening of the light. And we have this death process. And here we have a little bit like an overlap of the astrological year that we're using in the more Western way of looking at astrology, and then the Eastern way with the I Ching. They don't say that this is the last gate, but if we look where it is in the wheel and the astrology of going from Pisces to Aries, this is the last gate that is completely in Pisces, and it is in that codon ring of divinity. It has to do with the integration. Even when we look at the deconditioning process, Richard goes all the way to gate 42, which is soon, and those last gates in Pisces are the integration gates. And as we have seen for all the gates we've looked at the last few weeks, there is a fire on the bottom. So even if it's Pisces and it might feel watery, there's also this this fire where we kind of burn, and it's not that we burn in hell. And I think that's interesting. It's come to me a little bit this week because we have been speaking about with my dad and funeral and planning some things, which I think is quite macabre when somebody's still alive. But apparently the Swedish way of doing it is that everything is practical and everything is spoken about, and the coffin and all that. For me, it's very macabre. But I can feel, because my dad is Catholic, I was feeling the longing to actually do everything in Spain, and I don't see myself a Catholic. I went to church a lot as a child in Spain, and I know the traditions and all the things that are there. And somehow, not because that is the way that I live, but to honor the roots of my lineage and of my dad, even if he is kind of more wanting to be spread in the wind, I feel like by going there, and his family, because for them it's important to be part of that tradition, and where he doesn't have to say before what kind of clothes, what kind of coffin, what kind of ashes. Like, for me, that Swedish way, I can't stand it. However, like, that has brought me to think about heaven and hell, and also speaking to my mom about what are they called, the Jehovah, what are they called? The witnesses. I can't remember what they're called.
The Jehovah's Witness.
The Jehovah's Witnesses. How they have been taught from the beginning that if they are like leaving the cult, then they are going to burn in hell forever and all that. There is something here, I believe, that we are learning when we really tap into what integration is. And I believe there was somebody, it was Rachel, who was saying this week in the Ego Hub or in the team space. I hope it's okay, Rachel, here, I'm saying it, but she was saying, I'm starting to feel the transits in my body. And for me, like, such a simple sentence and such a huge shift, because one thing is to understand them and another thing is to feel them in your body. And I believe that the 22 and the 36, this is burning in hell, but in the beautiful sense that it's the bardo, it's feeling the karma of all of us, and it's feeling it deeply, and there is no way we can escape. So that's what we are saying, we all have to go through it, and this is the process of purification more than burning in hell. So I feel like there is, this is taking me back to the interpretation in the Catholic tradition, how we see it, and then feeling it in my body, what it really is. That feels important. And I think that there is something today where we can give an insight into that. And the last thing I'm going to say is my dad's life's work is this 36.1. So it's so perfect. He's the archetype of the storm. And my grandmother died last night in 36.3.4. So she decided to leave in this last gate, and she was 97 years old. So there's just something that, you can't make this up. It's just, it's there, and there is no way around it. And then how well can you allow it to purify the parts of you where you haven't been able to go before, where you have resisted to go before?
So, as you're speaking, I'm feeling the sort of connection of the sort of awareness that you're speaking about with the very real world emotional experience that we have as a human being whose real our emotional job is to create attachments. This is an essential aspect of human survival and evolution. Without that occurring, humanity could never have survived in a body like the one that we have, in the environment like the Earth presents. Our attachments were absolutely fundamental to our ability to survive and grow and thrive as we have. So in this discussion, Bella, with your family, in where it is, and with your father's life work, being right here present, it feels so, those attachments that we have to our family, our loved ones, our friends, even to our own sense of identity, our sense of self and who we are. It feels so easy for me to kind of reach out and or receive and feel those attachments, and what it's like to actually have those attachments either let go or forcibly changed. And one of the things that's really interesting about this particular hexagram, I think, is that it's earth over fire. And in the I Ching, there's no real talk of heaven and hell per se. There's discussion of heaven, but it's more in the terms of a cosmic sky rather than a religious place you go after death. And there's some allusion to underworld type experience within it, although it's generally speaking, they keep it pretty practical and above ground. So in the I Ching, when we look at the fire beneath the earth, it's generally put in the terms of when the sun goes beneath the earth, from this perspective of like the sun comes up and it goes down rather than the earth spins around and we see the sun in the center of our solar system. However, if you look at it from more of this Western perspective that has so much basis in the Western traditions or the religious traditions of the West, the Abrahamic religions, the earth, the fire under the earth is like the molten rock that is physically beneath the surface. And when you go back maybe 100 years in time to what was being preached about, and at least in the United States and probably in many places in Europe as well, was the fire and brimstone of hell, and how essential it is to accept the tenets of the religion in order to avoid the potential for eternal suffering. And I want to bring up, for those of you who haven't read Gene Key 22 in its entirety, within Gene Key 22 is a description of the Bardo states, which is the experience of the non-physical aspects of our being following the separation with our body, what we call death. And within the astral level, which corresponds to our emotional experience, there are the 7 levels of heaven and the 7 levels of hell, which correspond to what was written about in Dante's Inferno some, maybe 400 or 500 years ago. And these experiences of heaven and hell are eternal because within this realm, there's no such thing as the passage of time. Every moment is the eternal now. And so what we're talking about here in this development from the 22 into the 36 is the human connection to these layers of the astral body, which we can access right here in our body now. The fact that we go there, or maybe I shouldn't call it a fact, but the idea that we go to these states following our life doesn't mean that that's the only time we go there. We are, in fact, in some stage of those states of heaven and hell at all times throughout our embodied experience. And when we die, the redemption aspect of that transmutation or transfiguration, if we were to experience that, is about integrating the heavenly aspects and resolving the hellish aspects of our life embodied experience. And so I think in many forms of Christianity, particularly within traditional Catholic understandings and a few of the other variations of or sects of Christianity, one of the aspects of hell that is most important in terms of the Christ consciousness is the capability that the Christ consciousness has to go to the deepest depths of hell, to absorb all of the suffering that exists there and transmute it back to, well, I'm not sure that it's ever really described what it transforms it into. Many people, I believe, jump to the assumption that it changes suffering into paradise. But the paradise of heaven where there's angels and beautiful music and all of your desires are fulfilled or something like that. But I'm not so certain that that's really a mechanical description of what truly happens when we consider the potential of this non-physical realm's impact on our soul's journey. However, what I do think is more likely is that Christ consciousness allows for the transmutation of not just the suffering of hell, but also the illusions of heaven that we generate in our experience, so that we come back to a place of pure essence. And whatever that quality is for the unique, one of a kind in the universe being that you are, that's what you come back to, with the capability to choose any point within that spectrum of heaven and hell that you desire for your continued evolution, which I think is something that doesn't often get talked about on this subject, is our choice in that matter. So Bella, I see you kind of, that was a long description of this idea that I wanted to share. And Bella, I'm wondering, you were at moments I could see we're in agreement, and I'm wondering about your reflections, because I always find so much, there's such an added perspective.
Yeah, I feel there is so much I could say, and I almost want to go to the simplest. And I feel that last thing you said about kind of changing hell to heaven, and that I feel like we're learning with those systems and with the expansion of awareness, that it's not that black or white. And what I can just tap back into with my experience with this hexagram or this energy the last weeks, well, first and foremost, you started to speak about this is the emotional realm, and also just going back to mechanics in the body graph, we have those gates in the emotional center, 22 and the 37 and the 36, and also this cross, this is part of the cross of Eden. So the way that the incarnation cross works here is that you feel like you've been thrown out of Eden when you come into this earth and you go through the embodiment process, the first 21 years with the physical body and the emotional body and the mental body. And then your path is to find your little slice of something that feels better than having been thrown out of paradise. But of course, in this realm, it's still going to be a process of evolution where we learn to hold more, we learn to include more. And I'm going to take the opportunity, because I see also the time is ticking, to just show the elements. And you know, this is beautiful because we say the darkening of the light, right? And it seems like there's no way around. But if we look at it as bringing the light to the darkest places, and here again, to go to the simplest, what I felt I was doing with my dad, it was a lot of fear in me to see him in that state before I came there. And there was this adaptation the first 48 hours where I couldn't believe that that's the state was left of his body. And then I realized that the only thing I was doing, you know, was to bring that compassion or bring that humanity. And I was saying to somebody yesterday, again, feeling into the mechanics, that it hasn't been hard somehow, because the only thing that was required of me was to bring me, and there is, you know, bring the light, bringing me and being there. And here's a little bit technical again. My life's work is Gene Key 2.4, and my dad's pearl is Gene Key 14.4. And that's harmonic gates that creates a channel that we call the keeper of the keys. And it goes between the energy of the sacral and then the love, the G center, the direction, the love, who we are. So having that harmonic fourth line is the heart. Having that connecting, my life's work, my sun and his Jupiter are in perfect resonance. So what I could feel is that there was no effort from my part. When I could come over the fear of seeing him kind of being eaten up by the cancer, I realized that there was nothing asked of me more than my presence. And this is something as well that I feel like we know that that's how we wanted to feel in life, but I got to taste it. And for me, with a completely open ego, and some J-Lo and Rachel who are here inside with us know it, because we're looking at the ego center right now, and that worthiness thing, that's always a theme when you have an open ego. And I just realized there's no effort. The only thing I have to do is continuously transcend the fear of dying, you know, of the dying in front of me. And humanity is orienting lightness. So I also felt it wasn't until today, and I know this is a lot about what's going on with my process right now, but it wasn't until today that I really just was alone in Stockholm and I could just cry, because somehow it wasn't that I was holding in so much, but there was something where orienting with lightness and orienting with that little piece of the humanity that is still there, and the family feeling, the 37 is the family that we spoke about too, has just been so precious. So I really, when we're looking at this orienting, humanity is orienting lightness, and compassion is unifying rapture and bringing light to the darkest places. Like this is the essence of this key. And my life's work is earth over earth. So somehow my MC is fire over fire. So somehow I have never really accepted the 36. I've always longed and longed and longed. When are we going to come to universal love? When are we done with the messiness of the 36, of the 22, of the 37? Please take me out of this emotional turmoil. And then suddenly, you know, it gave me its medicine. And, you know, be aware of the difficulty of your position and maintain firm correctness. So even if it's scary, how can you maintain that centeredness? No, it's not going, and again, going back to what you say, it's not that we are looking here to create the perfect paradise, because where's the growth? when we do that? Where's the inclusion when we do that? No, on this plane as humans, it is to include the whole experience of being human, where birth and death are just part of the wheel, you know?
Yeah. It's so interesting to consider all of the mechanics, Bella, that go on in each passing hexagram of the transit. And even between you and me, your life's work, when you see this hexagram of the 36, your life's work is in that upper trigram, and my evolution is in the lower trigram. And so we're both bringing elements to this particular experience where I don't have the 2 in my chart anywhere. And, you know, for me, bringing that orientation to lightness is so essential in order to even understand how to experience lightness. What is the purpose of lightness when it is not experienced in the face of suffering? You know, and that's where the humanity comes in. So it's really when we begin to see the connections between these varying gene keys, it begins to really open your perception about this vast web of archetypal expressions that come together to create you. And not you as a personality, but you as a potential of life. Your personality, from my perspective, I don't believe will ever be responsible for expressing the truth of your essence. It can only be a vehicle to express that truth. It will never be because of your personality. And when we face things in our life where there is deep loss, where we get to experience death, it's putting us in the position of facing that truth, that our own attachment to our own personality, the person that we believe we are, will actually never cause us to generate fulfillment in our life. It can only be the vehicle, and therefore must be in service to something higher, which drives us forward in our exploration. And I wanted to bring up a couple aspects. I know when we look at these archetypes, Bella, that the focus of the archetype is primarily in the gift realm, which, by the way, I notice always still contains the shadow elements to some degree or another. Otherwise, the gift would really have no meaning from what I can see, right? That's what the city does, is it just like obliterates the whole polarity where, you know, it's like it's all perfection. But within that gift frequency, we can still experience those shadow states. And in the repressive state of nervousness, the reactive state of being crisis prone, where we kind of run around creating turbulence and experiencing crisis all the time. These states relate directly to some of the other gene keys, and that will be coming through in our elemental transmission. The one that's just coming up next is so important for us to be able to fully embody this Christ potential of the 36 gene key. And I also discovered that I believe it's gene key 12 and the gift of acceptance. Is that right, Bella? You think?
25 is the acceptance, so that's the next one. The 12 is the discrimination.
Discrimination. Yes. Sorry, I got those mixed up. So I'm not exactly sure how the 12 specifically, connects within our mechanics to this particular one, but it certainly has a role in this experience, in that the lower ranges of this particular frequency, when channeled through the sexual energy, becomes this sort of lustful experience, and discrimination becomes very important within that field. Bella, do you have any final thoughts about this gene key and this transit, or the full moon as a kind of potential for this particular one? I do. Yeah, go ahead and share, and then I think I have another word about maybe the full moon and the element we're going into.
Yeah, I can say something about my experience already of the energy of the full moon. And when we are in those moments where we know it's a hard moment, like I was saying in the I Ching about the correctness in the hard moments, I feel that the 36 and the Pisces energy can sometimes have us collapse or feel lost. And right now we have so many planets. We have the sun, and we have Neptune, and we have all the planets in Pisces. And then the moon in the full moon is going to be opposite the sun. So it's going to be in Virgo. So there is something that's asking us here to not collapse or get lost in all that energy. It's beautiful, it's expansive. It definitely has something to teach us, something to show us, something that we can feel through it. And at the same time, with this moon that is so illuminated right now in Virgo, it says there is a healing here. There's a physical healing. There is something tangible. There is something practical. And we also want to include that, so that it's not a collapsing and a super expansion and getting lost. And I feel like this is the creating paradise on earth, if we want, like when we can have that, when we can have the whole Pisces energy, and at the same time being in our bodies, tuning into the practical in the everyday, and the healing, the health in the everyday life. So I feel like this is an amazing opportunity for healing, and for going deep into the body, and also far out to the teachings. So that whole range of the Pisces Virgo axis.
Yeah, and that, I think, is a beautiful example of the potential of exploring programming partners with your own profile, your own design. When you've reached a particular transit or a gene key or a gate, and it just isn't coming through for you how to move forward, oftentimes we can find those answers in the programming partners, which of course are always part of this full moon experience. Anytime there's a full moon, we have the sun in its transit and the moon passing through its programming partner. So really powerful potential. And when we look at this element, earth over fire, we may think about these elements as, okay, this has got to be some sort of like fire activity. This is all about transmuting hell and the darkness, the darkening of the light. This has got to be about something like that. This is going to be a transmission about water and the water inside our body. And the reason for that, when we today have an understanding of the matter in our universe in a different way than much of the ancient wisdom looked at matter of the universe. oftentimes the elements that we experience were related to from the way that we experience the phases of matter, solid, liquid, gas, etc. And of course, now we're discovering these other phases that science has never been able to put their fingers on, which is kind of where science is starting to move into this potentially spiritual way of looking at the universe. But when we look at that fire beneath the earth, what we see is the heat of fire combining, the intense heat of fire combining with the rock of earth, the solidity of earth, creates a molten liquid movement of earth. And in this sort of more ancient way of looking at it, that liquidity relates to the element of water. And as that transmutes, one of the things that is the impact of this combination of earth and fire is gaseous emission. When volcanoes erupt, ash goes everywhere and all sorts of fumes of gases are released into the atmosphere. And this is one of those elements or hexagrams that incorporates all four of the elements for us. So it has a very, very powerful potential of doing a complete transformation for our experience. And this is reflected in Richard Rudd's teaching of this gene key by describing that a person can go all the way to the depths of the shadow of this gene key, and in a moment of horrific realization, make the leap into the city. So really a powerful elemental transmission upcoming here in just a minute. For those of you watching on Facebook, thank you for joining us. I hope that the remainder of this transit through the storm and our discussion gives you some new perspective, and that the full moon and its opportunity gives you a chance to take advantage of the transformation that's available for us. As I said at the beginning, we're having a slightly different schedule upcoming, and I got that worked out a little better, Bella. We will meet on Tuesday, the 22nd, and next Thursday, the 24th. We will then meet again on Tuesday, the 29th. So we're going to have a series of sessions upcoming in a row. So this is just kind of an intense chance for those of you who are receiving the transmissions through our solar membership. This is an intense moment where you can really have a large increase in frequency and possibility. I know, Bella, you mentioned Rachel saying she's beginning to feel these transits moving through her body. And in my experience, this is one of the impacts of these transmissions, and particularly of these elemental transmissions, which are focused on the aspects of the physical body, so we can merge these sort of higher spiritual, high frequency concepts with our embodiment. So for those of you watching on Facebook, we'll see you in a future discussion, and we'll look forward to that at another time. Also, to join us, you can click on the link in the comments. We'll see you next time.